Welcome back to Two Keto Dudes. This is Carl Franklin from Connecticut in the United States. I went keto in 2016 to reverse diabetes and lose weight. It's my mission to spread the science of keto and to show the world how cooking is necessary for keto success. Oh, and bacon.
Hi, I'm Carrie Brown, also from Connecticut. I'm a trained pastry chef who went keto to control and eventually eliminate symptoms from bipolar II disorder and depression.
Yay!
I take no medications, I have no symptoms, and it's my mission to show the world that keto food is not only delicious, but it can be better than any other kind of food.
And this show is a document of our experiences thriving for years in ketosis.
Reversing diabetes and depression.
And hopefully that might help a few people who are curious about this kind of dietary hacking.
We're definitely not doctors. We don't give medical advice.
Absolutely. We just want to share our experiences and review the research that supports it.
Oh, and bacon.
And all that good stuff. Yes, bacon. We share our recipes and any science that we find in the show notes.
This is a science-based show. Carl brings the body science and I bring the food science.
Right. So let's start podcast number 151. Dr. Westman heals everyone.
Everyone!
Everyone!
So, Carl, do we have any apologies or corrections from last week's show?
Richard Morris was listening to the show, and he did have a little bit of a difference in the way he would have explained something that I explained. He's got a couple things here. He says 7% body fat is not a limit for fasting. It's a limit for humans. It's like a 4-minute mile. Humans can run that. Most humans can't. Getting below 7% is almost impossible for most humans who don't have an inborn metabolic error. So look at what humans at various ranges look like, and he provides a link, which will provide a link of ranges of humans. He says, the limit to fasting is not body fat percentage, it's how much energy can I drag from storage to defray my daily needs, which comes down to body fat mass, not percentage. Someone with 30 pounds of body fat can liberate 945 kilocalories a day. But someone with 60 pounds of body fat can liberate 1,800 kilocalories per day. So the second guy can fast, the first guy can't without a metabolic rate drop and catabolism of lean tissue to make the 930 kilocalorie shortfall. Right? So it's just it's a subtlety. And, you know, we'd like to simplify things on this show. Generally, people who, Dr. Fung says, people who have 7% or less of body fat, but it's really about how much body fat they have, not their percentage.
So grams, not percent.
Yeah. And he also said, and this is great because Richard can just not be on the show, but he can be on the show. It's at the same time. It's awesome.
Big
he
brother.
Said that, yeah, Big Brother is listening. Livers don't filter. That's what kidneys do. And I said that, you know, livers filter the blood, and he's right. You know, livers do a different function than filter blood, but they also are detoxing your body at the same time. So yes. He says, livers are metabolic factories that detoxify by converting toxic chemicals that can't be easily filtered into urine into either non-toxic, useful chemicals or ones that the kidneys can extract and the bladder can expel. So it's a subtle difference. I said that livers detoxify the blood. He's absolutely right. Kidneys do that.
And some people's livers don't detoxify.
That's right. And that's what we were talking about in the context, right? You were talking about how your liver didn't detoxify the things that go into your body, but not necessarily into your blood, right?
Right.
And errata number 3, he says, you don't have to eat fat to increase metabolic rate. And this was something that I said, that if you want to increase your metabolic rate, you eat fat. It's really about lowering insulin. And it just so happens that when you substitute your protein and carbohydrates for fat, your insulin drops. But it's really about the insulin, not about the fat. So we got a couple of things. Oh, there was one more thing. I said that lean people are more fit than overweight people, and that's not true. And I'm actually a living example of that. My resting metabolic rate is kind of low, but my mitochondrial efficiency is very high. It's as high as a marathon runner, and I had this tested. So lean people are not necessarily fit. Fitness implies ability to do work. Lean people are metabolically adaptable. And really what I meant instead of lean people is people who are insulin sensitive. And I should have said that instead of just lean. I think I did, but I may have muddied the waters when I said that. So thank you, Richard Morris.
Now look what you've gone and done.
I know, really.
Now we all want to go and have that test that shows us how metabolically efficient we are.
Yeah, mitochondrially efficient.
That's
right.
it. That's what we want. We all want to go and do that now. And it's all your fault.
I know. I can't wait until it just comes around on a bus to everybody's hometown.
But for the curious, aka me and probably a bunch of our listeners, what is the test? What how do you do that?
Okay, so the test was done on me anyway at Keto Fest Down Under. And Martin Sebis had a machine that essentially I sat and breathed into at rest for a few minutes. And it measured how much oxygen I was taking in and how much carbon dioxide I was breathing out. And based on that, a whole bunch of things were measured. And one of them was my metabolic rate. Another one was my mitochondrial efficiency. And the mitochondrial efficiency means how much energy they're taking in versus how much they're expelling.
Wow, that's fascinating. And I really want to go and have that test now.
Yeah. So anyway, that is our errata for our very first show. Thank you, Richard Morris. But before we start, let's explain in plain English what a ketogenic diet is.
So a ketogenic diet is any diet that puts you in a state of ketosis where you burn fat for energy rather than glucose. The way we do it is to limit carbohydrates to 20 grams or less every day, enjoy a moderate amount of protein, 1 to 1.5 grams per kilogram of lean body mass, and all our energy comes from fat.
That's right. If you're just starting keto, listen to our Starting Keto show at start.2keto.com.
So, Carl, what's new with you?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I've been prepping for Keto Mini Fest, which is happening tomorrow. We're recording this on Friday the 11th. And Saturday the 12th, of course, which was a couple days ago, if you're listening to this on Monday when our show comes out. So I've been doing a 48-hour sous vide chuck roast. And I'm doing it a little bit differently than I do normally. Normally, I've done this at Keto Fest, the VIP party, and I'll do it again this year, is I just take garlic, crushed garlic, salt, olive oil, and thyme, and just sort of haphazardly put it in the bag and seal it, and then put it in a sous vide water bath at 133 for 48 hours. But this time, what I decided to do is put all that good stuff in a food processor and whiz it up. So you've got olive oil, you've got garlic, you've got thyme, and not the stems, just the leaves. You've got salt, you've got peppercorns, you've got oregano. And all of that stuff gets blended up, and then I just sort of coat the chuck roast. Think of it like a pot roast, right? It's like a 4-pound pot roast. I coat that with this green goo. It's what it looks like. It just looks like this green slime, right? And then, of course, it goes in. When it comes out, it's going to be dark brown, and I will sear it, and it'll blacken, and it'll be delicious and awesome.
Well, I'm super excited to give that a run on my taste buds tomorrow night.
Also, you sort of helped me come up with a side dish, which is going to be sort of like spinach artichoke dip, but with some roasted cauliflower in there for something to bite into. And we're going to do a mozzarella top and crumbled, crunchy croutons from Julie at Fox Hill Kitchens. She's coming down from Vermont and bringing some croutons. We're going to crush them up and put that on the top. So you'll have your crunch element that us keto people desperately need to find.
Yay, crunch.
And you're doing a dessert, are you not?
Actually, I'm doing 2, and
Oh.
I went and got all the things at the store today, and so tomorrow morning I'm going to be busily preparing 2 different desserts for our meetup guests. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that goes.
Are you going to tell us what they are?
I'm going to make cappuccino mousse,
Mm-hmm.
the recipe for which is up on carriebrown.com, and we'll put a link in the show notes. And
So does that kind of have a tiramisu kind of flavor to it?
no, it's very espresso. It's bolder than tiramisu and not boozy.
Okay.
And the other thing I'm going to do, because Mr. Franklin requested something wintry,
Yeah.
and I thought wintry made me think of crumbles. So I'm going to make a strawberry surprise crumble.
Oh, my.
So continuing the crunchy top theme, I thought a crumble, and this recipe is actually in, if you have a copy of the Keto Crock-Pot written by moi,
Yes.
you will find the strawberry surprise crumble is in there. So it was originally designed as a crock-pot recipe, but I'm going to do it not in a crock-pot because I don't have enough crock-pots to make dessert for 40 people.
Great. Well, that's what I've been working on, and you too, but what else has been new with you this week?
Well, I started doing lives again. I used to do a live Monday night at 8 p.m. In Facebook, that is. And life got a bit crazy at that back end of 2018, and I wasn't able to do the lives, but I'm back on schedule now. So I did my Monday night live this week, and I did another live talking about keto and mental health with a lady called Robin Davis.
Okay.
I am excitedly planning for a massive March road trip. Road tripping is one of my favorite things to do, and I'm thinking this one's going to end up at about 8,000 miles. So I'm planning for that, getting very excited for that. I spent some more time chatting to the lovely Amber O'Hearn, the carnivore queen. She still has just a few slots left for her carnivory conference. They've been selling like crazy since we mentioned her last week. She's still got a few slots left. So if you want to come join us in Boulder, March the 7th, we would love to meet you. The link will be in the show notes, so you can grab one of the last tickets. Another milestone was that Ralph, the Forerunner, hit the 302,000 miles, so he went in for a service, and I was thrilled to see that he needed nothing else other than oil.
Okay, now Ralph, come on, tell us what Ralph is. I don't think our listeners know who Ralph is.
Ralph is my Forerunner, my trusty Forerunner.
Your car.
In my car, he is coming up on 17 years old.
Wow.
And he's a beast, still going strong. So every service where you need nothing but the oil, it's a huge celebration.
Yeah, absolutely. Mine's a 2012, so I've got a few years to catch up to Ralph.
Yeah. And the other thing I did was, because it's January and I do this twice a year, but I started the Getting Started cookbook special. We have, of course, a lot of people, their thoughts turn to health and maybe losing some pounds and getting healthier in the new year. So I have my Getting Started cookbook special running right now, where you get all 5 of my cookbooks for the price of 3.
Wow, great.
That's the digital versions, not the physical versions. So if you're new to keto, or you want a whole bunch of keto recipes that work and taste delicious and are keto, then this is the week.
Great. Go get them, peeps. All right. Well, let's give away some swag. We're going to give away a 2 Keto Dudes coffee mug to a lucky member of the 2 Keto Dudes fan club. And Carrie, of course, the new mugs have your mug on them, not Richard's. So anyone who has a mug from the previous year or two has a collector's item.
I'm still giggling about the fact that there's a mug in production that has my face on it. But the lovely David Lee, our winner from last week, he came and joined us over in the Keto Kitchen Facebook group, and he's very excited about being the owner of the first Keto Dudes mug with my mug on it. So
that's right.
So who's going to join David and be our winner for today, Carl?
Well, today's winner is Cecilia Ford. Oh, wait a minute. There's the clappers.
And if you don't want to wait to win a coffee mug, you can get your own at gear.2keto.com.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I'm very excited for our next guest, who is Dr. Eric Westman. He's been on Two Keto Dudes before, and he's actually going to make a remote appearance tomorrow, which was Saturday, I know, time shifting, at the Keto Mini Fest, and he's going to talk about lazy keto is okay. Now, Dr. Westman is an amazing human. He's one of the first doctors to embrace the ketogenic diet and actually do research on it. He's done over 100 studies about the safety and efficacy of a low-carb diet. And he still continues to this day to help so many people at his clinic in North Carolina. So let's roll the interview that we did with Dr. Eric Westman. Well, we have Dr. Eric Westman on the line from North Carolina. How are you, Dr. Westman?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks for being here.
Good morning, Dr. Westman.
Good morning. How are you today?
I am doing really well. It's 7 a.m. on the East Coast, and life is good.
So, Dr. Westman, I haven't seen you since Low Carb Houston. What have you been up to since then?
Well, what a year, hasn't it been? 2018. And I think it's going to all continue 2019 and beyond. All of the Keto festivals, so to speak. I think there's one called Keto Fest. And I have to say, it's been exciting, and I know it's a lot of hard work to put on conferences, having been on the leadership of an organization nationally. So thank you so much for putting on Keto Fest and being involved in what really is a grassroots movement. You know, I think that's the main point of what I'd like to talk about today is, if I could, is update on the grassroots movement and ways that people can get involved now to keep the movement going.
Right. Well, I know that last year, 2018, Google said that keto was the number one Googled term for diet, health, fitness, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And I think that's remarkable. And you can look at Google Trends and you can see how it's just gone up and skyrocketed last year.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And why is that, do you think?
Well, I think people are getting results. Like you said, it's grassroots. The evidence is all of us walking around without all these pounds on us. And then when people look into it and see, oh, yeah, and I also reversed diabetes, and Carrie doesn't have bipolar anymore, and, you know, my friend doesn't have cancer anymore, the stories just compound.
But I also think, and maybe I would because that's what I do, but I think there's so many more resources available now than even there was a year ago. Yeah. So people that are finding it now are kind of not kind of coming and going, oh my goodness, what do I eat? People are coming and going, oh, there's all these resources. So it doesn't seem as difficult to start, or it doesn't seem as kind of crazy or fringe anymore, because when they come to it now, like they type in Google and there's all of these options for them, and there's all of these recipes that have already been created, so they're not kind of as lost as maybe they were a year ago. And you know, on conferences, it feels like there's a new one pops up every week. I noticed last week there was a low carb Utah has joined the joy. So it's really becoming like in a town near you, there's keto people that are super excited about their journey who want to share that and help you get started.
There's also a lot of coaches out there, and some doctors that I know. A certain doctor in North Carolina has started a sort of a clinic to help people.
Oh, you mean me?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Well, so, I've been in a clinical setting. So I'm an internal medicine specialist by training, and most doctors get no training in how to help people lose weight, or doctors don't get training in nutrition.
Yeah.
So I went out to get special training, and in the medical world, we call it obesity medicine. You can actually be board certified in this area. And I've been teaching the keto, low carb, high fat, if you will, approach at these meetings for about 10 years now. And I'm a teacher of other doctors in this space. And then also we set up our own clinic at Duke University. Now it's been 12 years. So I've been, after doing research, I go way back. It was 20 years ago when two of my patients were in front of me doing this kind of crazy diet, eating steak and eggs and fixing all of their medical problems. And it was my curiosity that led me to write Dr. Atkins a letter. And then he called back and invited us to the clinic. And so, what I sense is we've always known that it works, right? I mean, so even for me 20 years ago, these two men, because I was at a Veterans Affairs hospital, they were all men. Now, I had one patient who was a woman out of my own panel, but we always knew it could work. And, the Atkins books have been out since 1972.
Right.
So, but there was always this fear of the safety. And so that was when Dr. Will Yancey, who's now the director of the Duke Diet and Fitness Center here in Durham, North Carolina. So you can actually, someone says, I know you're going to have to lock me up to do it. You can actually voluntarily come to Durham and go to one of these residential programs. Dr. Yancey's program has a low carb keto component to it. But so when we were talking about what really needs to be done, what's the concern? This is 1998 now, going back. We thought it was safety. We thought is it really healthy? Is it okay to eat all that fat?
That's what derailed me from the Atkins diet, was everybody around me telling me I was going to die.
Yeah.
It really is a visceral fear of fat that is so deeply ingrained in our culture.
And what were they basing that on, looking back?
Just to tell you the truth, it just sounded like fear. I mean, all that saturated fat's going to clog your arteries and, that old saw. And you're going to have a heart attack. And
you talk to a plumber or a car mechanic, and they know grease takes grease off of things,
Yeah.
So anyway, it's like this bizarre, abstract thing that has nothing to do with reality. Although doctors would get up and say, fat on the artery, fat in the food, duh. Like it was, that's kind of as logical as, the sun goes around the earth. Are you stupid?
Right.
Look out the window,
I kind of think that the failing in thought there is we know that sugar is water soluble and pretty much goes right into the bloodstream. And it's in there. And we can measure it. And we've known that for a long, long time.
But it's called diabetes if the blood sugar is high all day long. It's a terrible thing.
It is a terrible thing. Thank God I don't have it anymore.
But also, don't you think that there have been a significant number of people that have lost weight just doing low fat, which is what we were told for 40 years was like, eat less and exercise more.
Yeah.
And you can make that work. You can force the fat off.
Sure. In
that way, because a lot of people did. But what they didn't realize was that there was a better, more effective way to do it. But
or
also,
just a different way.
Different way.
Yeah.
Right. Doing it the old way, it was incredibly hard. It took a long time. You needed like a boatload of willpower. You were hungry all the time. But we just thought that, well, this is what you have to go through to get the end result. And we also didn't realize that although we may be forcing the fat off by doing those things, eating less, eating low fat and exercising more, we weren't getting healthier on the inside, which is what happens with keto as well.
We didn't know about insulin, I think. And, The thing that I've learned about insulin, even just in the last couple of years, is that there is no weight loss unless insulin is low. That's the only way that fat is going to exit your body, is when that insulin is low. And you can do it by calorie restriction, but your metabolic rate will slow down, and we all know what happens then. Bounces back with a vengeance. But once you know that, your focus should be on how can I lower insulin.
Lower insulin, yeah. Well, that was, if you read Gary Taubes' book, Good Calories, Bad Calories, so that came out right in the early 2000s, and it brought up all of the old data from Europe that basically said that. So the doctors knew before 1950 the answer.
Yeah.
So 100 years ago, doctors were using this diet to treat obesity and diabetes.
Right.
So it was all forgotten. So Gary's book was important, just looking back on what things have changed, although it didn't really cinch the safety. So, in our research, and I'm happy to say that we helped to contribute to it, Jeff Volek as well published a paper in 2002. Again, this is now 16 years ago, where not only did you lose weight, but the lipids actually looked better, and everyone's worried about the lipids today. So, if someone's coming to this new, I just want to communicate that I had all of these same concerns about health and safety, and I was skeptical. But for me, that was 20 years ago.
Right.
And so I've watched people not die.
You're keto royalty, man.
Well, I don't know. I think of Dr. Atkins and Steve Finney, my teachers, to be, the real pioneers.
You're in the royal family.
Well, okay, maybe the younger brother, but so I just want to communicate that knee-jerk reaction and fear that even people say today really has no basis in fact.
Yep.
And in science, and that is, I think that's the change that's happened. Of course, a new name helps.
Yeah.
If you have a disaster, if I'm a company, change the company name.
Sure.
But, there was no disaster here. Again, it was sort of a knee-jerk reaction against a man, against the fear of fat. And so I think that from my vantage point, everyone knew it could work, but there were concerns about healthfulness and safety. Yeah. And fortunately, those concerns didn't materialize.
And when we first spoke to you on Two Keto Dudes a couple of years ago, you mentioned something like you have helped, I can't remember, 4,000 or 5,000 patients in the last 10 years reverse diabetes and obesity.
Yeah. So, I don't have a big research engine, which sadly I want that. My initial training as an internal medicine specialist and clinical researcher led me to do these studies that are in the peer-reviewed literature. Our randomized trials were published 2004 and 2008, 2010. So in a sort of quality assurance analysis, meaning I can go in and pull data from my clinical computer. And in that kind of analysis, we've helped 2,000 people lose 28,000 pounds just over the last 5 years. And it occurs to me that, a doctor doesn't have to prove that a drug that works in their practice.
Right.
This should be obvious. So the doctor sees the blood pressure go down after giving a pill. I see the weight go down after using the keto diet because it's scientific,
Right. Yeah.
So, but it still shocks people to know, well, no, this works, Yeah. So there are a growing number of clinics, growing number of doctors, but I was persuaded by a couple entrepreneurial folks that, doc, they just ask me those tough questions. What are you trying to do? I'm trying to get as many people to do this or to know about it, at least have access to it and treat them, get them off their medicines for diabetes and all that. And they said, okay, how many have you treated? Well, 2,000 over 5 years. Then they said, great. How many people need this? Millions.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh gosh. So publishing papers only goes so far.
Right.
Having podcasts and being on shows and all that only goes so far. And so the grassroots people have taken this into their own hands, and they're doing it on their own. And that's what we're doing with the medical clinics now, because I'm frustrated and tired of trying to convince the doctors. Right. Either they get it or they don't. And like you're saying, it's a visceral reaction still for a lot of doctors today. well, you can't, eat that, stutter through the word. And now, you and I, we say, we love fat, It's almost like the marker for whether someone's gone through that intellectually. It comes out in their stutter.
My doctor, when I, look, she thought I was a superstar and all my numbers were great, but was concerned about my cholesterol. And then she'd asked me, "What do you eat?" And I said, "Bacon, ribeye with butter, a lot of fatty meats, and it's vegetables as well. But I don't eat all the starch and sugar." She just looked at me and shook her head like, you are going to die.
Well, and you didn't laugh, right?
No, I did not. No, I was dead serious. Yeah.
Well, and that's another thing. Why do people give us doctors so much power? No, I'm joking. It's
the white coat.
Yeah.
And the stethoscope. That's your authority.
Well, so people have been taking this into their own hands, and one example of that is these Facebook groups are popping up.
Right.
Facebook groups of keto and this, keto and that, or LCHF and this. And one example of what can happen, and there was a paper published in the journal Pediatrics this year, which is high-level journal, peer-reviewed, and this Facebook group of people with type 1 diabetes doing keto, pretty much all lower their insulin requirement. You still need insulin if you have type 1, but they didn't need as much, and their blood sugars are better. And so one of our research fellows here at Duke decided to do a project surveying this Facebook group. And
type
the results
1 grit,
really
right?
good. Type 1 grit, yeah. And TYPEONEGRIT, all spelled out. And at that time, there were a couple thousand people on the site, and Dr. David Ludwig at Harvard got wind of it and said, "Hey, let's redo it." And he'll throw in some validation, calling the doctors to make sure the A1Cs were accurate and all that. So it was high enough credibility. It wasn't just the self-report of people, although I think that's valuable. But anyway, it got it through the peer review process and published in the journal Pediatrics. And the response was interesting because, most clinical people value that these people, there were, a couple hundred people in the survey who lowered their A1Cs and on less insulin with type 1 diabetes. But the other response was, well, it's just, a survey.
Right.
And now I'm in another totally different situation where there was this muscle disease that no one could treat. In fact, the professor who's the worldwide leaders never thought of letting muscles run on fat for energy. So now they're, just stepping back into the biochemistry a little bit, the body's really good at burning sugar, and it's really good at burning fat. And you can tell your body to burn sugar or burn fat by eating sugar or fat. So It turns out the muscles do really well on fat. But the experts in this rather rare condition called a glycogen storage disease, glycogen being the sugar storage, thought, well, since they can't store sugar, we'll just feed them sugar all day long. So wake up children, feed them sugar, try to give them starch that gets digested all day long. And people on their own decided, well, why don't we do this keto thing? Of course, I don't think they really knew that what they're doing behind the scenes is just changing the fuel to what you eat. And if you don't eat sugar, you burn fat. And so this muscle disease gets better overnight. And there are different types of glycogen storage diseases, and they're not all the same and all that. But if you have a certain type called McArdle disease, you actually do better when you're burning fat in your muscle. But as we know, the way to turn off fat burning is to get insulin up.
Yeah.
And the way to get insulin up is to have blood sugar go up. And the way to get blood sugar to go up is to eat carbs.
Yeah.
So they did a survey of this group now for McArdle disease, and I don't know if it's Facebook or another social media site, and 30 people basically chimed in with anecdotes like, "I'm fixed. I couldn't walk," or this is the interesting syndrome where people find themselves pretending to tie their shoes every 100 yards. because they're just so tired they can't walk.
Yeah.
And so it's like just being out of wind and energy. And the group got together and they hiked across northern in the UK. And anyway, so I sat in a meeting recently where people are telling the world's experts, here's what we're finding. And one of the world experts, and it was a small meeting, 10 people or so, said, well, they must have been misdiagnosed.
What?
So,
yeah. Where was this? Where was the demand for scientific proof when people were, I don't know, smoking cigarettes and dying, right? Or drinking alcohol and getting cirrhosis, or eating Twinkies and getting sick.
Well, but this is the classic doctor thing. In fact, it was caricatured in the 1800s by Honoré Daumier, where the arrogance of just any profession, right? If I didn't come up with it, it must not be true.
Yeah.
Or if it worked for them, they must not have had the right diagnosis. And but actually, the optimistic view is that there are researchers now looking at this for this condition, and just really stepping back to the biochemistry and the big picture view. You burn what you eat for energy. It's protein. Protein comes first. Right. That's not a negotiable thing, but then you can run your body on sugar or fat, and you can choose that fuel by what you eat. And some organs, now, you look at different organs in the body, most of them do really well on ketones and fatty acids.
Right.
And, the brain does, like bipolar and epilepsy getting better. The liver does great. The
heart loves ketones.
Muscle, the heart loves ketones. So there are only just a few cells in the body that absolutely need glucose. And even then, that's not really well studied. When I have students come on my rotation at Duke, they can actually rotate through a keto clinic and go through other weight loss programs. And one student was interested in ophthalmology in the eye. And so I thought, well, for your month, figure out what the eye really needs for energy. Is it a glucose requiring organ? And it turns out, best we could, no one's really looked. And no one's really cared about whether the eye could run on sugar or fat. I mean, well, it really is kind of a bizarre question, I suppose. But on the other hand, don't you want to know?
Yeah, of course.
Anyway, so I guess what I'm trying to summarize is that people are doing it, getting together in groups and changing academia.
Yeah.
So changing the researchers who, so there's the latest science is not coming out of the governmental research programs. They're in the old paradigm. Mm-hmm. The latest, even I call 30 people in a row case series. That's a scientific observation, and that counts, and that's pretty exciting.
So, Dr. Westman, I know that you have this Heal Clinic, and you guys were instrumental in helping us launch Keto Fest 2017. And a group of people, and you're doing coaching and you're sort of bringing your clinic to the masses. Tell me what's going on with Heal lately.
Thank you. Yeah, the Heal Clinics, HEAL, for healthier eating and living, is a way to scale up the availability of keto teaching. If you're not on medical medications, you don't have medical problems, we teach people at a distance. Most people are calling that coaching these days. We call it partnering, but same kind of thing. Yep. But what I've learned over now, 20 years, 2 decades of using a keto diet, is that if you use it in someone who has medications, especially diabetes and high blood pressure medicines, you have to be careful. You have to understand that the medicines can become too strong very fast. And so in my experience, and I roped in Jackie Everstein, who worked with Dr. Atkins for 30 years. Well, I roped her in. I asked her to help create the clinical protocols and the clinical teaching program so that we can scale up. I'm not going to wait for Dr. Smith down the street to figure this out and teach him or her. Let's create our own practitioners. Let's train our own army of people. I kind of feel like there's this epidemic there's a disaster here, and no one's training relief workers to fix it. So it's like, we're training a new type of practitioner. In fact, we're coining a new type of medicine called keto medicine. And the type of practitioner understands how to talk to someone, meet them where they are. That's called motivational interviewing today, meaning you actually talk to someone and listen. Always seemed natural to me. But and then they understand food, nutrition, and they have no fear of eating fat. That's a big one. And then the clinical providers understand how to de-prescribe medication. And that's actually a new term created by the pharmacists, so that we are creating practitioners who can de-prescribe, take people off medication. And they love it. I mean, I've had people on insulin for 20 years be able to be off of their insulin in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Because the food they were using insulin to cover or to treat the food.
To treat the
Heal Clinic.
Yeah.
Treat the glucose, yeah. So the Heal Clinic, we've worked hard to find the right business model. And we found it basically now, which is we don't go and create our own clinical, we don't go, build a building and do that. That's just so cost prohibitive. What we're doing is we're putting in practitioners in another clinic. So it's called a host clinic model, where kind of like Target agreed to have Starbucks come into their buildings. They don't make the coffee, but they know their clients want the coffee. And they'll
so
shop.
It's a franchise.
Well, technically not in terms of the business side of things. We still are the ones who control the people who are doing it, but that kind of idea where, so Dr. Smith, this is a fictitious name. So Dr. Real person, Dr. Spruill in Virginia is the one who owns the clinic, but rents out the space to one of the Heal practitioners and wants that service for his patients. So what happens is there's a built-in referral automatically. So what we're finding is chiropractors, internal medicine doctors, cardiologists who understand that the keto can be good and but don't want to figure out how to do it. Yeah. They outsource it to someone. So we go in and we do our practice inside their clinic. So it means there's a variable startup cost. So you start up a clinic usually 1 day a week or half day a week, then 1 day. And so you're not hiring, 1,000 workers to sit while you generate patients.
Right.
And then you can scale it up. So it's almost like, stepping back on sort of a battle model. It's like we're getting little beachheads inside we're creating little areas in the medical system that it will be doing it.
Right.
So you don't need the approval from the very top, although you need approval from the person who owns the clinic. So, but the other interesting thing is, most of my patients have to wait 4 to 6 months to come see me now. And in a Heal clinic model, you can get seen almost immediately.
And
so you
in a
have
place
enough
that's close
people,
to you.
In a place that's close to you, yeah. So I have people flying off from Timbuktu to see me in Durham, and while some people can do that, most people can't. So it's creating that new type of practitioner that will be geographically located, well, we hope all over the world one day, but at least starting in the U.S. So that's called the Heal clinics, and it makes sense now that I think about it, thinking back that there's this phenomenon, and you've used it with Keto Fest, where you can have a Kickstarter to do a program or a product. What we're doing is that kind of crowdfunding. It's not really Kickstarter, but you actually can buy stock in the company with as little as $480, and you can actually shape the future of keto medicine.
Wow.
By supporting the company. Yeah, isn't that pretty cool?
That is cool. So that's a model I've never heard of before. I mean, of course, I've heard of investments, but you're just opening up to anybody.
Right. So, well, not quite. I mean, there's a form, and it's SEC approved. So the U.S. Securities Exchange Commission. But with as little, it is pretty much to anybody. In fact, you can put it on your credit card, which was kind of interesting when I invested myself. I can just put it on my credit card. But it's a grassroots change. I mean, hasn't it been all along? So the Kickstarter idea where you buy the conference ticket ahead of time has been turned into, just in the last few years, an equity investment idea, so that you can buy stock in the company by this kind of crowdsourcing.
So, Dr. Westman, my passion is about keto in the mental health space.
Yeah.
Do you have you got any examples of patients who have seen their depression or bipolar go away?
Yes. We haven't published them in case series or in a peer-reviewed journals, but in my clinical experience, I have. It's not 100%, kind of like 100% with diabetes will get better, so I think it's going to be more complicated than just to say do keto and your mental health problem will be better. But yeah, I think it's one of those situations where if nothing else has worked and it's feasible, practicable for you to change what you eat, why wouldn't you try it? And that's my stance really with any sort of medical problem that can't be treated or fixed using the medical mainstream.
Well, there are studies, keto, and I'm sure you know of these that show under brain scans just how somebody with mental health, the brain looks like it's been shot to hell with holes and places that just are dormant, and after thriving on ketones for a while, it looks beautiful. And so if you just for general brain health, even if it doesn't address your specific mental health issues, ketones are great for brain health, right?
Yeah.
And for me, that's one of the most exciting things about the whole keto thing, because there's so many people that are struggling with their brains from ADHD to bipolar to Alzheimer's and all of those things. There's millions and millions of people who suffer. So for me, there's one of the biggest things that we need to tackle is this mental health problem. And Dr. Westman, that the number of mental health professionals available, they're absolutely swamped with people because, we just don't have the capacity for the therapy and the counseling. So to pioneer a dietary approach to mental health is just the best thing from my perspective, having suffered from bipolar 2 disorder for all of my life. But as you said, it's not for some people. It's not just keto, and it wasn't for me either. It was a combination of keto and some other things. But for me, what's happening for keto in the mental health space is just magical.
Fantastic. Well, the medical treatment, medical mainstream suffers from the same medication focus for mental health as there is for diabetes, hypertension, and all that. And the medication treatment of mental health disease can actually make the situation worse.
Yeah, I've seen it.
In terms of carb cravings and weight going up and
mental health.
Harder and harder.
I mean, some of these SSRIs are linked with, suicide attempts, this kind of thing. When you promote HEAL, are you focused on weight loss and diabetes, or do you also appeal to those who have, cardiac problems, heart disease, cancer, mental health, as Carrie talks about?
Yes. So absolutely, yes. The mechanics of it is you just go to the healclinics.com website. That's HEALCLINICS.com website. You fill in an initial health assessment. So there's a little bit of information you put in. It's reviewed by our medical team. Mm-hmm. And if we think you need to be seen in a clinic, we refer you to the closest clinic. If you are not on a slew of medications and things like thyroid and again, it's a personal clinical judgment because that's where we're at. I don't think this can be safely rolled out in a mass-produced sort of way, like, just letting cars go out there without anyone learning how to drive them, So we review it, and even though we named it the Heal Diabetes Clinics, we treat obesity, we'll treat mental health problems, as long as we think that that's within the scope of our clinical base. And Jackie Eberstein, who's the lead in terms of teaching and even the clinical care, has the most experience of anyone on earth. I mean, she worked with Dr. Atkins for 30 years. And so she's
the one that actually dealt with the patients, right?
Yeah. Well, But so when I visited in 1998, she was in the trenches. And Dr. Atkins was more like the professor down the hall. You would go take your patient in there and he would give the blessing, And so, it was an interesting thing to watch because they didn't really agree on what to do. Dr. Atkins said, "Oh, a bar, why not? I need them." He pulled one out of his pocket. And Jackie Eberstein said, "No bars, no shakes, no sweetness." So what I saw pretty quickly is that there was an individualization that depends on the person.
Sure.
So that's how the Heal Clinics also treats the patient, not the problem itself. So it's a holistic approach.
That's great. So if you're listening out there and you've thought about, you've healed yourself, obviously there's a lot of our listeners who have healed themselves and they continue to listen just because it's interesting and to stay motivated, I guess. If you're interested in helping, in being you call them, I don't know if you call them coaches but being on the Heal staff and working in one of your clinics, what should somebody do in that case?
Yeah, so we have a team of people sort of on the bench as the company grows, and where we put the clinics is a combination of, who's there, and the state. Actually, different states have different requirements to have this kind of practice there. Mm-hmm. So you would just email or go to the website healclinics.com and send an email saying what you're interested in. And so patients can get access to care. Practitioners can sign up to kind of be on the team just say you want to learn more about it. And we keep track of everyone. We're really at that stage where, depending on the launch, we're crowdfunding right now through December and January, and we're aiming for $1 million, and we've actually got $250,000 as of today.
Wow!
So we're well on the way. Of course, it's never enough.
This is super, super exciting.
Yeah,
it's there's a lot, and I know that a lot of the public have had success with keto. And a lot of them are self-appointing themselves as coaches. And I think that's super cool that they want to do that. And of course, they've had success. So, they know how they did it. But what we really need now, it's got to the point where there's a lot of people out there who have had no training either in how keto works broadly or how to coach other people.
Right.
And so I think this is, I think we're kind of almost going backwards in that regard. What we need now is people who have some education in this so that they can more effectively help the masses rather than, all these self-appointed coaches. So this is super, super exciting. And so I'm now, your self-appointed coaches are going to become credited via your program, Dr. Westman?
Well, we're not selling an accreditation to people. We train them and keep them hired on our staff. Right. So it's a matter of controlling the quality of the service we give. Mm-hmm. And there's a interaction that we think is really important to have several levels of backup, if you will.
Right.
So we've trained nurse practitioner, in a state, and while they're trained in the method and all that, they may have a question about what to do.
Sure.
Well, they go up the ladder to me or another physician. If we don't know, then we go up the ladder to Jackie Eberstein. So we're keeping that expertise in-house, if you will. I just have to say your comment about personal experience and wanting to get involved, that's the major investor reason. We reached out to the people who have made investments, and what I hear is, I struggled to find the information myself. I want to make it easier for the next person. Yeah. My mother lives in California. I live in North Carolina. I want to have clinics in an area where, my family is. So it's a real sort of, I guess in the early company, it's a way to give back. People are personally affected by keto, LCHF, however you want to say it, and know that it can be so helpful. A lot of healthcare providers are investing here. A nurse has just seen her. I'm looking at an investor comment. All of her patients are getting worse over time. She knows that keto is the answer and wants to give in to a company that's going to make this grow. Now, another patient said, or another investor said, I weighed almost 300 pounds and not one primary care doctor said a word.
Yeah.
So there's a failure on the medical system level that we don't have to wait for. So it's like we're training relief workers in an epidemic.
Yeah. Do these relief workers have to have medical credentials in order to be on your staff?
If they're in a clinic, yes.
Yeah.
If they're just teaching at a distance, something we call the non-medical program, no. So most of those people are super users. So it's almost like what Weight Watchers developed into, where if you have personal experience and you get extra training, you can then pass it along to other people.
Right.
So you don't have to have a medical credential, although we're heavily packed with actually nurses and RDs, dietitians and clinical diabetes educators, but that's not a requirement. And finally, one person said on the investor side, and I don't remember. It's not me. I'm carrying a baton and passing it forward. But this person said, I'm a heel investor because of Dr. Westman and Jackie and Eberstein's international reputation and the science behind the approach.
Yep.
And the clinic within a clinic model reduces overhead. And there's a subscription service, kind of like a gym, where you get the money in. And so anyway, I think we have the right, I know we have the right business model. We've worked hard to get to this stage to see how can we really roll this out, scale it up, and I am really excited about this.
Well, we are excited too.
This is incredible.
Yeah.
And I followed in my mind that Keto Fest Kickstarter idea.
Yeah.
Getting the grassroots, but this is different in that you're actually getting equity, you're getting stock in the company. So if you can imagine, it's like you got Apple or IBM stock when it was first started. Yep. You wish you'd done that.
That's right.
And to my best I can tell, this is the only company you can actually invest in the keto low carb space.
Well, the only company that's doing real stuff. There's a lot of companies that sell products, but everybody knows that, it's really not about products. It's about cooking and eating
real food.
Yeah.
Just food. It's just food.
It's just food.
And that's one of the issues that I'm seeing more and more in my practice with newcomers coming in. Carrie, as you mentioned, even teachers who are newcomers, there is an obsession about having fat and food quality and all, and it's great, but it's not necessary. The initial focus should be real food. Don't add in products and all that stuff, because this was described 150 years ago in England, and you don't need all of these other things, although they can help, like keto cookies and products. But that's a distraction I'm seeing. I saved someone recently by he was paying a couple $100 a month for all these vitamins and supplements and doing keto, and I said, well, why don't we just try, just keto.
Bacon and eggs.
He's happy. Yeah. He's saving all the money.
I think there's a place for the products in that, when we know that real food works, but I think, compared to 50 years ago, the world has changed so much in terms of, the vast majority of people in the Western world, both parents work, which didn't used to be the thing. And so the world is moving along at such a fast pace. I do think that the thing that makes it more difficult from just eating real food is the amount of time we have to cook and prepare that food. So I do think real food is always the first line of defense, but I do think there's a convenience aspect that we've just got used to.
Sure.
That I think it's always better, from my perspective anyway, it's always better to give someone an option that's better than the alternative if they really can't get to the place where they can prepare, prep, cook good food that day.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Always real food first, but modern life is such that I think there's a place for some good keto products to fill in the convenience gap that we've become so used to.
Sure,
expecting.
There is, and I agree with you. The only caveat I would say, and I think we're all in agreement here, is that it's not necessary. It may be necessary from a convenience standpoint, but certainly not from a health standpoint. Yeah.
Not from a scientific standpoint.
Right.
Exactly. I just think they can bridge the gap. And I would much rather someone get a good keto bar or a good keto shake, not that, and a lot of them aren't, but grab one of those rather than, get off the keto wagon and eat some, non-keto nonsense. So I would always do that as a preferred if they really can't get to the real food.
Well, I cross that line philosophically as well, as I'm involved with a product company now called Adapt Your Life.
Yep.
AdaptYourLife.com, and we have great keto bars. And,
yeah, they're good.
It's never been easier to do a low carb or keto diet because of the other convenience foods. And I mean, even seems like the big food industry is changing with cauliflower rice in our area. You can buy at the store. We used to have to teach people to make their own food processor, cauliflower rice.
Right.
Now it's available, and no question that there's a appetite for convenience foods that we have to meet in the keto world in order to make dramatic or wide-scale change. Absolutely. But you don't have to do that. Actually, I heard Nurse Cindy in San Antonio had a great line. She said, eat the highest quality and best food that you can afford and you have access to.
Mm-hmm.
But the main point is to keep the carbs low. Run your body on fat.
Well, Dr. Westman, it's been a pleasure talking to you again, and we both wish you, and we all wish you, really good luck with this, and I'm sure that some listener out there is already at healclinics.com, either investing or signing up to be on the Heal staff, and thank you for everything that you've done in the past and that you continue to do for us in the future.
Well, my pleasure, and thank you too.
Sounds
Carl.
like 2019 is going to be a really, really great year for you, Dr. Westman, but also as a roll-off of that, all of us as well, because of the things you're doing that are literally going to change the landscape of health in this country. That's, 2019 is going to be an awesome year, and thank you for your part in what you're doing to make that so.
Well, you're welcome. I really have no choice. It's a mission for me now.
Yeah.
It's what I have to do.
Yeah. Thanks again.
My pleasure.
All right. We'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
Well, it was really a pleasure to talk to Dr. Westman. Did you talk to him at Keto Fest when you came last year?
I did. So that was actually my third time meeting Dr. Westman, and I don't mean this to sound shallow, but one of the things that I find always so awesome about Dr. Westman is that he's so tall.
He is a tall individual. Yeah.
And I remember the first time I met him, I was just like, wow, I'd never got the sense from seeing his picture online that he was that tall, but he's
a mean piano player too.
He is super tall and he's super nice, and well, it's such a pleasure to have him on the show. Absolutely.
And we wish him luck. And if you're, go get your investment in Heal Clinics because the time is running out. Well, I guess it's time for some recipes. See, I got to do it longer now because Richard was always like, recipes!
And that was so epic. I don't actually think I need to contribute to that.
Oh, everybody wants you to scream recipes, Carrie.
No.
All right. Well, anyway. Yeah, I know. You're a reserved English woman. It's okay.
I have my moments.
Sorry. I lost my head. I apologize. All right. What have you got? Because you're the recipe queen.
Well, the other week, there was, you were talking about sous videing pork chops, and I mentioned that there was, for those who do not have a sous vide, because of budgetary restraints or space restraints or don't know what a sous vide is yet or whatever, I mentioned that there was another way to cook pork chops without a sous vide that would give you super juicy, delicious pork chops.
Okay.
And then I ran away and I didn't actually explain how. So I thought that we'd cook a pork chop today.
Ah, great.
And this is one of those weird things that, and I actually, you can read the full story on my blog, but I actually learned about this technique while sitting in my therapist's office when I had bipolar 2 disorder and used to go to therapy every week. And I was reading in my therapist's office and learned the best way to cook a pork chop.
So where did you read it?
I don't know. I wish I could remember the publication it was in, but it was in a kind of a science journal thing that I read about this. And I remember it was like 7 pages of scientific geekery into the cooking of pork chops. And I took away from it, I boiled that 7 pages down into 6 words. Because I had to leave the journal there. So I boiled the 7 pages down into 6 words. And then I went home completely not believing that this would work.
Yeah.
And I tried it and I was amazed.
Okay.
These were the best pork chops. When I say best, I mean juiciest. I don't know about you, Carl, but before the sous vide, how many times have you thought, oh, I really want a pork chop, and you've been disappointed because they haven't had a lot of flavor and they've been dry? Dry.
Yep.
And so I read this journal and I came home and I cooked it, thoroughly expecting it to be a complete fail and to not work. And I was blown away when I got the juiciest, tastiest pork chop I'd ever cooked in my life. And I was like, well, I don't understand how this can work.
Well, you hinted at this last week, right?
Right. And I have done it now. I've done this. I must have cooked pork chops at least 150 times using this method since I read about this technique, and it works every single time. I cannot explain why it works, but it does work. And it's also the simplest thing ever. So we're going to cook a pork chop. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. So it's 6 words.
Okay.
And those 6 words are, well, actually, there's 2 versions.
Okay.
Do not heat the pan first. Or, put another way, start with a stone cold pan.
Oh. And that's what you said last week.
That's
Start with a cold pan.
Yep. So here in detail is what you do.
Okay.
And I know a lot of you are going to be going, what is this woman on? No, you have to preheat the pan and use oil and put oil in. No. Trust me on this. Try it once. You'll be amazed. And I've had thousands of people tell me that this is true.
Right.
So... And no, I did not use fancy smancy organic grass-raised pork chops from rainbow grunting pigs fed on truffles and warm milk. I used regular pork chops from the regular grocery store.
That's great.
Actually, because I'm cheap, they were really cheap regular pork chops from the grocery store, and it still works fantastically. So here's what you do. And I kind of added a few steps in because it's so simple. So you remove the skillet or the pan from the cupboard.
Mm-hmm.
And you place cold pork chops. So you get your pork chops out of the fridge.
Right.
And you put the cold pork chops in the cold skillet.
Now, do you put anything on them? Salt?
No, nothing.
Anything? Nothing.
Nothing
Really?
at all. Cold, naked, fresh from the fridge pork chops
Okay.
into your stone cold skillet.
I get you now.
And you place the skillet on a cold stove, like no heat.
Got it.
When you got all those things in alignment,
I wish everybody could see Carrie right now. She's so excited. She's animated. Her hands are moving wildly in the air.
And you turn the heat on medium.
Yes. Now, is this electric or gas?
Well, on gas. Now, I have gas. So when I wrote this, I was electric, and so that was medium. But now I'm on propane. I'm like, that's low.
It's probably low. Yeah, low,
low,
medium. Yeah.
So low, medium. And you're going to just leave them there for 3 minutes. You're not going to touch them. You walk away if you have to. Just leave them there. And then you're going to come back and you're going to turn them over and you're going to sear them with a spatula. And if you don't understand when I say the word sear, it just means push on it. So you get your spatula and you just push down. So you're just pushing the chop against the pan. Okay?
Now you're not going to lose any juice that way.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
I mean, you do that with hamburgers and all the juice runs out, but these are pork chops. They're a little more
these are pork chops.
Self-contained.
In fact, so you're going to turn it over. You're going to sear it.
Yeah.
You're going to cook it for 3 minutes. You're going to walk away. Don't touch them. Just leave it sitting there.
Got it.
And then you're going to turn them over again. Another sear. 2 more minutes. Turn them over. Another sear. And then turn them over. Cook them for 1 minute. Turn them over. Cook them for another minute.
All right. So this is interesting.
You don't do anything with them in the meantime. You just turn it over, sear it, leave it.
This is really interesting because Richard Morris was talking about there are 2 camps of doing steaks, right? In a seared pan. One of them is 4 minutes on one side, 4 minutes on the other side, 4 minutes in the oven, 4 minutes resting, right? And the other one is flipping every minute or 15 seconds, actually.
Right.
Flipping. And that's sort of going along the lines of what you're doing.
Right.
You're constantly flipping.
The important thing is the cold pan, the cold chop and the cold pan. That is the critical thing to this. The flipping is not so important.
Really?
It's the cold chop, cold pan, no heat to start with.
And why is that?
I don't know. I do not know why it works.
It just works.
But I know it does work because I've done it 150 times.
Great.
And I've had thousands of people screaming with delight over the juiciest, tastiest pork chops they've ever eaten.
Well, that's awesome. That's enough for me.
Cold pan. So the cooking time will vary dependent on the thickness of your chops.
Sure.
And whether they have a bone in or not.
Right. If they have a bone, you need to cook more.
Right. So they are done when they are perfectly browned on both sides.
Okay. Now, do you use the finger method? Do you push on it to see how much give it has? And therefore you can tell how done it is? No?
Nope. When they're perfectly browned, they're done.
Interesting.
You put them on a plate. And at this point, halfway through, you're going to look at the pan and go, it's completely dry. Like, there's no way this can work. But you're going to do this. You're going to trust me, and you're going to, when they're perfectly browned on both sides, you're going to slide them onto a plate, and you're just going to watch it. And a few minutes later, the juices are going to start to ooze out the sides.
Wow.
And then you're going to eat the juiciest pork chop you've ever had in your life.
Now, I can't believe you don't season it with at least salt or adobo or something.
Nope.
Really? You don't season your pork chops?
Nope.
Okay. But I got to imagine if somebody wanted to season them, there's no harm. It's not going to change the juiciness of it, right?
Nope. The key thing here, cold chop straight out the fridge.
Cold pan.
Cold pan, no heat. Put
No
those
heat.
three things together, turn the heat on, off you go.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. It's a gentle heating and not an overheating of the outside on any one side because you're constantly flipping. It makes a lot of sense.
It is something to do with the pork proteins, the science of pork meat. And there were 7 pages of geekery, and I don't remember any of it. I just remembered to start with a cold pan.
Carrie, that is good enough for me. I'm going to try. And I saw the pictures. They look delicious.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you don't have a sous vide, that, my friends, is how to cook a pork chop. And once you've done it once, you'll go, I don't know why it works, but it does.
Yeah, I'm going to try it. I'll report back to everybody. I'll take one for the team.
And those, and I'm looking at it, there's this picture of chops on my website.
Yeah.
And that we'll link to. And those, I don't know if Carl's looking at it right now, but those pork chops, there was nothing on them, nothing. They were just plain pork chops cooked as I've described.
Wow. Very good.
So that's it.
That's it. That's a show. You know, if you have anything you want to tell us, something we said wrong, something that you don't agree with, some more research that you've found to support or refute anything that we've said, send it by email to dudes@twoketodudes.com or just post it on our website.
And you can follow us on Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram @2KetoDudes. Make sure, if you do, to use the hashtag 2KetoDudes.
And of course, if you want to join the free ketogenic forum, it's forum.2keto.com. And you can have a look around the ketogenic forums without needing to create an account by starting with success.2keto.com.
Also check out my Facebook group. Well, it's ours really, because Carl's got his name on it. It's called The Keto Kitchen. The link is below. That's if Facebook is your thing.
Yes.
And if you feel like supporting our forum and the podcasts that we produce, please think about making a monthly pledge on the 2 Keto Dudes Patreon page at patreon.2keto.com.
Yes, and thank you if you've already pledged. And you can also see all of our podcasts and other videos on YouTube at youtube.2keto.com.
And if you haven't already, please go and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, because that's how new people get to know what we do. And given that it's January, there's a lot of new people who are eager to find out all the goodness that keto brings.
Exactly. 2 Keto Dudes is brought to you by 2 Keto LLC, who strives to support the low-carb community with podcasts and other publications. Carrie, keep calm and keto on.
Yes, keep calm and keto on.
And we'll see you next time on 2 Keto Dudes.